Welcome to every video we make. We use one little thing and then we build the narrative out of it.
Did you guys hear about this Doctor Who show?
Yeah, it's a spinoff of Chicago Hope.
I believe so. Yes, yes. It's a medical drama. It's a brand new show, just
Mhm.
started. This had its first episode. We invite on a guest to talk about it. We have Mr. Tardis here. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the live stream. It's great to talk
Yeah.
talk with you all about a show that honestly I've never really seen much of it before. I'm hoping you folks will
Right.
be able to
Yeah.
clue me in.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
We're learning about it right here. Yeah.
The blind leading to
Live
blind.
learning. Yes.
Best way to do it.
Yes. Yes. So I thought to open up today. I put together some trivia. You guys want to dive right in?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go.
Mr. Tardis, you have a YouTube channel. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Mr. Tardis. I've got a YouTube channel where I talk all things Doctor Who and general media advocacy. I'm a freelancer in the TV and film industry in the UK. Been working there for about 7 or 8 years. So I approach it from a different point of view. Not just one of the fans, shouting behind a keyboard. I'm actually working on the sets. So I like to think it makes me a little bit more understanding when things go a bit weird. But yeah, so that's kind of the approach that I take it from. And I've been a fan of the show since it came back in 2005 with Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper. Christopher Eccleston is my doctor. That's like the fan term.
Ooh.
Who is your doctor? Eccleston is mine. And it didn't take me long for me to dive into the classic series. I mainly do in-depth reviews of the classic series and the revival. I've recently finished a big review marathon of the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, reviewing the current specials. And every so often, I'll dip my toe into reactionary outrage and reactionary responses to Doctor Who and media in general, which can sometimes be very, very fun, and sometimes it's very confusing. Frequently both at the same time.
Wait, does Doctor Who have reactionary reactions to it? I haven't noticed any.
No, well, it's interesting because it's not just online grifters. There are sometimes actual politicians and people in positions of authority who have disapproving thoughts of the show. There was an MP, a member of parliament, a couple of years ago, Nick Fletcher, who stood up on International Men's Day and said that the erasure of men in media to be replaced by women, citing Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Doctor Who, was not only causing an increase in crime in the UK, but specifically an increase in stabbings.
Oh my God.
And
Oh, yes. I see the
yeah.
connection there. Sure. It makes total sense.
Yes, and of course, and he also cited James Bond as an example of a character who's been replaced by a woman, aka something that hasn't
What?
happened.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So he said it's an increase in crime, an increase in stabbings, and he won his election by like a majority of around 700, or a very razor thin majority. So I don't think Nick Fletcher's making it to a second term as a member of parliament, but we'll see.
Mhm. I will say, diving a little bit into like the little bit of reactionary content I've gotten to in Doctor Who, I'm kind of amazed how I'm sure you've noticed it too, how offended they are by apparently Davros being walking before his accident, in a 5-minute short on YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on that one?
It was particularly interesting seeing reactions from people like Nerdrotic and Heel versus Babyface, who a couple of years ago there was an episode called The Halloween Apocalypse, where there was an actress in it called Nadia Albina. She's a disabled actress. She's got one arm, but she's like a veteran TV actor of stage and screen, Royal Shakespeare Company, super qualified, great actress. And obviously, I'm not saying that you have to be super qualified and work at the Royal Shakespeare Company for 15 years to be in Doctor Who. But like, this is she's not a diversity hire in a conventional sense, if that makes sense. And Nerdrotic and Hill versus Babyface was super indignant and visibly uncomfortable talking about her in their reaction to the episode. So for them to get all indignant and super defensive about this Davros, they say it's a retcon, but it's not. It's a prequel to before Davros was in his accident, similar to the Star Wars prequels before Darth Vader gets all burnt to a crisp and becomes a little chicken nugget, and then has to go into the suit and everything. So yeah, so it was super interesting seeing them try to thread that needle and walk that tightrope of disabled people shouldn't be in media, but also we're really defensive about this particular representation.
Yeah,
And
the
it's
Davros
a 5 minute,
representation is questionable. That's too.
yeah, and it's a 5 minute short for charity as well, of
Yeah.
dubious canonicity. You can ignore it if you want.
Yeah.
You can take it super seriously, but it's been interesting seeing the quote backlash to recent episodes and just how little material they have to work with. Like I did a nearly 2-hour video, like going through just different random reaction channels and such, and same arguments, same points over and over again, the same like minute of dialogue in a hour-long special. It kind of shows that the recent run of Doctor Who, despite being super woke and broke, etc., is giving them very little to actually work with.
Yeah, they do love to scrape what they can. I just love
Chuds find a way, they
Yeah.
figure something out.
Here's a 5-second dialogue clip. This destroys all of canon now. We have to be outraged about it and make 20 videos. I feel like that's the general rule of thumb.
So somebody in chat had asked about this, and I was curious as well, because I remember that I don't know if you know our friend Pillar of Garbage, if you've heard of him, but he had a comment under a video he did about Nerdrotic recently that was kind of wow, kind of wild. And it was, let's see. So for those that don't know, almost 4 years ago, Nerdrotic invited an open white supremacist, Bowlestrek, guy who said this, Jim, in the good old days, cities like London and Toronto were mostly white, but now they've become a victim of massive social experiment. Goal of experiments, wipe out white Christians. And that they were apparently doing a little bit of a Jewish questioning in relation to the show. Is any of that, does that seem like that's an accurate description of him? Or
yes, if anything, that's actually kind of understating it. Bowlestrek is somebody who kind of came out of nowhere in 2018 to do super white supremacist, like neo-Nazi reviews of Doctor Who, which is that's a strange demographic to hit, but he somehow managed to. And it's interesting because that particular review was for an episode called Demons of the Punjab, which is an episode where the Doctor and the companions go back to the partition of India. And in my opinion, it's one of the better episodes in recent years. It's written by Vinay Patel, terrific writer, award winner, who's written incredibly great, like high-profile TV dramas in the UK. This individual who Nerdrotic invited on is called Bowlestrek, called Vinay Patel a diversity writer, a category writer hire or something. Like, once again, you can be super qualified, super adept at writing, win awards and such, but you're still a diversity hire if you're not white. But that review that he did was so mask off racist and so openly neo-Nazi-ish that he actually got a backlash from his own audience and wound up deleting the video.
Wow.
Really?
As somebody who makes a brand on triggering the libs or whatever, it's kind of strange for him to delete a video and then say, oh, it upset a load of people, so I deleted it. Like, no, aren't you meant to lean into that sort of thing? But Nerdrotic has invited him onto his live streams numerous times. He's a pretty flagrant open neo-Nazi, Jewish question stuff. In the recent video that I did, I reacted to his review of the Star Beast, and he's actually, and this isn't a reaction video, it's a written, edited review that he then records the script for, so he can edit it out if he wanted to. But there are moments of him looking at the background of scenes to figure out how many extras are white. Like, oh, there's white actors who are saying this. And not only that, I actually missed this on my video. One of the actors who is like, oh, there's so many white extras, you can't have this in media anymore. The main guy isn't white, he's Asian. But like he's like white passing, for lack of a better term. But it's like, oh, okay. So like he's unironically doing erasure. It's weird. He's like looking in the background extras, finding out how many of them are white. He's like, he cannot view Doctor Who or media in general outside of the lens of race in a really blatant way that I think it's quite mentally debilitating to view media in that way. And it kind of shows. The guy's unhinged.
Yeah, it doesn't sound a whole lot different from a lot of these guys like Nerdrotic and stuff. Maybe a little bit more overt with it, but
Yeah, I feel like we deal with that a lot.
Yeah,
But
and it's interesting as well, just like how it is like an echo chamber as well. They invite each other onto each other's streams and just to regurgitate the same points. There one stream with Nerdrotic and Bowlestrek, they're reviewing Fugitive of the Jadoon. And Bowlestrek is like, oh, and of course a white dude is the villain, and everyone's like, yeah, how terrible. Fugitive of the Jadoon categorically, objectively does not have a white male villain character. The villains of that story is a woman of color and a rhino person. So he makes up this white male villain to get angry at, and then the whole live stream gets indignant about the white man bashing. They just invent a character to get angry at, and the whole live chat, the commenters and stuff just kind of roll along with it, which is the most perplexing part of the whole operation to me.
Do you think that they are betting on the ignorance of the chat when it comes to a lot of this? Because it seems like the pushback from the chat is very little because they're kind of wrapped up in the moment.
I think they are.
I
think people like Nerdrotic and Heelvis, not Heelvis because he's British, isn't he? I think his pronouns. I think he's British. Nerdrotic is American. I think a lot of his audience is American as well. They're just counting on people just not watching the media that they're talking about. There's like basically every reaction and review is just full of like inaccuracies and stuff. And if you don't like the episode, then that's fine. If you don't like the show, that's fine. But you kind of get the sense that they're not even watching the media. Or we're talking about very different episodes or very different shows. Just a pretty blatant mischaracterization of the objective events of the episodes.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing that a lot with some of the Doctor Who reaction because, like I said, I've looked into the reaction of the Davros thing, which was really weird. But like I've seen people like I point out like, hey, this is clearly a prequel. It takes place before the accident, before Davros is in a wheelchair or whatever. So I don't see why it's an issue. And like I get people reacting like, what do you mean? The special was just behind the scenes talking about the creation of the episode, and I was just like, you do know, like, this was all just like a 5-minute short, right? Like, this isn't an actual episode. I find it fascinating how often they just like they go along. The fans just seem to go along, but don't actually know. Really,
I think
watch it at all. Yeah,
yeah. I think the abstraction is the point. Like they have to like for people who don't follow Doctor Who or don't watch the show, which is fair enough. Nobody's perfect, but for people who are like, okay, they did a full blown episode where they retconned Davros, and there was a recent episode where it's a 2-minute fun gag joke opening before the title sequence happens, and it's got Isaac Newton. The inventor of gravity, of course, and he's played by Nathaniel. Of Mavity. He's played by Nathaniel Curtis, who's worked with Russell T Davies before on It's a Sin a few years ago. Really great drama, and everyone just flips out because they cast a biracial actor as Isaac Newton. And I guarantee you that a lot of people walked away from those conversations who don't watch Doctor Who thinking that there was a full-blown 60-minute historical biopic episode about Isaac Newton, where it was a 2-minute gag pre-title sequence where Isaac Newton mishears the Doctor and Donna and says Mavity instead of gravity. So yeah,
and they talked about it like they actually like retconned history or something, right? Like that this is actually somehow erasing history.
Well, I was just gonna add weird. Like when I saw there was a reaction to that episode, I was like, how's there a reaction? That episode is just about essentially Donna and the Doctor being trapped on a space station with a robot and the ship. And like the villains in that are actually played by the Doctor and Donna as well. So like, how's there? The combi bit at the beginning. Wow, we're digging.
So Danny Boy Joe here had said Nerdrotic and RK have always been racist. And that may probably is true. But like at least Nerdrotic hasn't always presented himself that way.
And I would say as prior to 2016 also didn't present themselves.
I really dislike the fake geek thing and the poser nerd thing. That's not what we're about. We're about inclusiveness, and we want new people in. And if new people,
classically Nerdrotic is about inclusiveness.
But it's also
Uh,
like not just the content of the reviews themselves and who he platforms. If you just look at the thumbnails of his most recent Doctor Who reviews,
God.
Yasmin Finney is depicted on like Dwayne the Rock Johnson's body. And
Right.
so obviously there's of course the transphobic element there. Oh, this person who obviously passes for a woman. There's no way you can look at Yasmin Finney and think, oh, that's a man. Like, no way, not in this universe.
Right.
But
Mhm.
also it's the racial element as well. Like, black women are inherently manly, inherently masculine, and aren't feminine enough. So there's the obvious element there, even before you get to the review itself, the obvious racism of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The other thing is, and the question that I ask quite often when I have interactions with people that follow these channels is, what harm would it be for any of these characters to be something other than what they were before? What's the harm in that? What's the harm in, women being present in these spaces? What's the harm in characters who are gay being in these spaces, people of color being in these spaces? I mean, if the answer boils down to racism or misogyny or homophobia, there's no other reason to be upset about it. And they just don't want to accept that. They don't want to
And
even
cooties.
admit that. Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
cooties too.
Yeah,
You don't-
girls have
You don't
cooties.
want girl germs involved with your show. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
actually like watching stories that tell me, or I don't want to say teach me because I don't feel like it's a learning experience, but give me an opportunity to experience other people's lives in these moments, because I've seen the same thing so many times that I like seeing things that are different. I like a variety of things, and it seems like a lot of these channels keep arguing they just want the same content over and over and over again, and it's quite baffling to me.
Mhm.
Mm.
I mean, I will say I've found their narratives can get very redundant, and like I almost feel like sometimes you can get a nice rinse and repeat quality. So it's like, oh, they're okay, so I know what they're saying because this character pops up. They're
Oh,
very
yeah.
predictable. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a bit in my recent reaction video reacting to reactionaries who are complaining about the Star Beast, and when Bowlestrek starts like talking about all of the white soldiers in the background, and I even stop and I say, there's a character who turns up later on who's wearing a turban, and he's not going to be happy about that. And then 5 minutes later, that exact same thing happens, and it is very predictable. You can see these talking
Mhm.
points from orbit. Like the moment you watch something in an episode, and it's like, okay, yep, this is what they're going to complain about. And sometimes they'll just complain about things that you never possibly saw coming because
Yeah.
it's just so dumb.